Choose one. Good choice. Sometimes violence is better than sacrifice.
Well, on filmishilmy.com, we have been absolutely fortunate to have some of the finest filmmakers of our generation in Indian cinema and internationally. And one other name I think that we are very fortunate to be joined by today is Sriram Raghavan. So, Sriram, thank you so much for joining us on filmishilmy.com. I know you've had such a hectic schedule, so thank you for taking the time out to join us.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. And I would love to talk to you. I mean, I'm talking to you, but I'm just like, in the sort of, I mean, I may get some calls in between, but don't worry about that because there are people watching the movie right now. They just come out of the hall. So,
Oh, wow. Well, lucky us, we get to experience what people think of Merry Christmas literally as they've watched it.
I might just give you all fab reactions. So don't believe me too much.
No, Sriram. As our brand is, you're pretty much like that too, raw and real. And I think that's something which I've always looked up to, especially when it comes to your filmmaking. So let's get straight into it. I mean, look, Merry Christmas. The trailer was extremely enigmatic. It's left us all guessing what the hell is going on. But from what we know, it's obviously about these two strangers who are spending a Christmas together, which might not necessarily be so merry because it's a Sriram Raghavan film. So tell me, what exactly sort of compelled you to writing this film? And when it comes to unpredictability, what helps you to bring that in your storytelling?
Me, I sort of, I had the story for a while. And, every story is there for a little while and you sort of let it, keep it in a drawer or keep it aside till you are really ready to tackle it. And so I had the story before while I was making Andazan, I guess. And, or just before. Andazan also is like 5, 6 years back. So when that got over, and that film strangely and happily got me a lot of sort of appreciation and a lot of love from people. Like so, naturally, I wanted to do something which is not like that the next time. So I was actually working on a war film called Ekkis, which I've now started again. We revived it actually, and then when we began after Andadun, we began Ekkis. We did a lot of prep and work and casting and everything. And then the pandemic struck, and so I was like, okay, I can't do this. It's a big film, it's a war film, and so it was not feasible to do it at that time. And so we kept it aside. Then I said, okay, let me do something small. Then COVID part two came, and all that happened. But meanwhile, I had sort of had, since I had this story, I decided, okay, and the story is dear to me because sometimes what happens is you have a story for a few years, and then you say, okay, now it's time to go. Luckily, the story is from a certain era itself. It's a story set in the 80s and so on. And I said, okay, let me do this. And I don't know why. It is so different from Andhadhun that I felt tempted. Otherwise, if I wanted to do something which is in the same template, I would have probably chosen to do Monica Oh My Darling, which was with me. And then I said, no, I'm not doing it. So Vasan loved it. And so Vasan took it and he took it like he made a fab film out of it compared to what I would have done because he brought terrific humor into that film, which I would have probably treated in a different way. I don't know how I would have done because I had again just a blueprint sketch of the story. It was not a full-fledged script. So I said, okay, that movie, I don't want to do something with that kind of exactly the same sort of a template. So I said, okay, let me try and tackle this. And then came the whole thing about how to cast it in a unique manner and all that. And yeah, well, it's coming from Friday now. It's been a long, sort of a longish journey because it's not that I'm working every day on it, but yeah, it was on my mind.
And do you know what's really special as well, Sriram, is that actually it's 20 years since Ek Hasina Thi released this year. And I think the growth you've had as a filmmaker is immense. And I think if I am to revisit that film after watching the immense movies that you've done, you can definitely see a trajectory that's been there. How do you feel now, actually? The fact that I feel it as an exterior, as a third person is quite interesting. But how do you feel as a storyteller when you look back from Merry Christmas back to Ek Hasina Thi? What would you say has been your greatest growth?
I think the only thing that happened to me is I think thanks to the movie that did work, Agent Minu, because at some point after Ek Hasina Thi, I made Johnny Gaddaar, Both were sort of small films and had complete freedom. Even though
Mm.
Ram Gopal was producing it, he used to give us lovely ideas and thoughts and suggestions and so on, but he didn't interfere really. And that film, of course, there was a story written by Pooja, who's my editor now, and also my co-writer. And so we made a lot of changes, but it was a film. I was like, because I was just desperate to make a film, so I made that film. But it was done with a lot of every film is done with a lot of love and affection and hard work and all that, and trying to do something. You try to sort of impress, forget the world. At least you try to impress the filmmakers who are dead and gone. And you say, okay, if they watch it, they should be okay with it. I mean, okay, it's like it passes it passes muster. You can say that. So Ek Hasina Thi was a film we enjoyed making. It didn't do great business, but luckily it survived over the years. And I've not seen it recently, and maybe on 16th I will probably have. I'm trying to get a screening organized, but it was shot on film, so we don't have a DCP, and I don't know who has got the negative and so on. So yeah, just keep my phone on silent because these messages will start.
Like that's great. Right. No, I think it's wonderful though. Because you say that again, Ek Hasina Thi wasn't a commercial film, but the beauty about your films is that you manage to still bring in sort of commercial faces and you've managed to extrapolate a side to them as artists that haven't been done before. I mean, even if we look at Saif Ali Khan, for example, in Ek Hasina Thi, we look at Varun in Badlapur, Tabu and Ayushman in Andhadhun, and now Katrina in Merry Christmas. So it's interesting you say that, but then you still manage to achieve that sense of commercialism. So what would you contribute towards that sort of decision making?
I'm going to interrupt you, but let me tell you. See, I said it was not a commercial success, but very much my sensibility is mainstream because I am the guy who has been watching films from the age of, till 8 to 12, probably my parents had to take me. Once I discovered I could cycle and I could grab a little bit of I could just, play hooky and go and watch. I watched a lot of movies of the 70s.
Hmm.
So like, the hall has to be full, the people have to react, that's my thing. At the same time, definitely, I cannot do any of the last year's big blockbusters. I cannot do any of them, and I happily confess that. I'm not even sure whether I want to do this,
Right.
because that's a different game, and that's a different game which is, I mean, there are people who do it fab, and I go and watch them on the first day because I want to watch all these movies before I read the reviews. So I
Hmm.
try as soon as I can. But my sensibility is probably molded a lot by 70s Hindi cinema, and after that, I joined the institute. So there's a lot of world cinema that's sort of all the new wave and Truffaut and all these guys were like dazzled me. The Wim Wenders. Then when we discovered Kieslowski, okay, I mean that's a great filmmaker and great films and so on. And so on it goes up to Coen brothers and all that. Of course, there's Spielberg who's been there since and is still there, and that's he's a like,
Hmm.
uh,
Sure. And I think it's interesting because you and Anurag Kashyap, I think, have been two contemporary Hindi filmmakers who really have brought that neo-noir feeling, I think, through your films, and that's really seeped very much through. But I think you're right, actually, about sort of consuming a lot of commercial Hindi mainstream films like Manmohan Desai's work. I remember in the interview podcast that we did many years ago, you did mention that. And it's interesting because you've always had sort of Hindi film references as well in your movies. Like, I think even if we look at Andhadhun, by you casting Anil Dhawan, for example, I mean, that was such a brilliant move that I would not have. Yes.
so happy when he said yes, and I went to meet him. I said, "Sir, do you still act?" He said, "Of course I do." And he's doing a lot of television serials and all those things. I didn't know he was not acting in films, but I'm very happy I got him because I also got with him a treasure of songs, which are his old songs and yeah. So I think because there's this sort of I really I mean. When I'm making a movie or writing a movie or editing a movie, I'm also the viewer in the hall, watching it in my head, in a sense.
Right. And again, I was going to say, we have like a Rajesh Khanna reference in Merry Christmas as well. So again, when you absorb different kinds of cinema, do you find it easier now as a filmmaker and as a storyteller to sort of translate what's in your head, then onto paper, and then on screen? Do you find that process a lot easier because you've gotten into the stream of things?
No, it may be easier in terms of maybe finance or not too much easy, but yeah, and sort of actors willing to trust me a little bit. That's the main thing because I have not really made blockbusters and I'm not like okay, this guy's last film did so well. If I next film at least if it does half, we are safe. It's not like that. My films are risky and and there are a lot of actors who refuse this film.
Oh, really? That's interesting. That's interesting. So how do you deal with that actually? For example, because I've heard so many stories where a director or a storyteller, they've written roles for bearing in mind a certain actor. But then at that time when that actor or actress has refused that character, they obviously opt for someone else. And at times it's worked, sometimes it hasn't worked. So how do you deal at times when perhaps, with rejections, perhaps, I mean, even though someone, I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to reject you, first of all, but when that happens, how do you deal with that?
No, you sort of see. I'll tell you. Basically, the thing is, there has to be hunger on both sides. It cannot be. It cannot be like I go to somebody and they may be having a different point of view at that particular point at time. So suppose, for example, Varun Dhawan was when he was doing Badlapur, he was like he had just come out of a Student of the Year. He was a young budding actor and so on, and he wanted to take risks and chances. The same guy, maybe after four successes, commercial and quotes, I'm saying, he may think, oh, he may think, I don't know, but since he did my film first, you start, what happens is, that when you get too much success, you start getting pressurized to maintain that. Whereas that's some sort of a thing I feel I should just not think about, and it's a foolish notion actually, because success will not trap you.
Right. And I would love to talk a bit about Katrina in this film, honestly, because I mean I loved her in a few films before, like Namaste London and Zero, where I thought she really showed her acting chops very well, even in New York as well. But I think here, I feel like this is gonna be really her breakthrough of sorts. For you, Sriram, when you were casting for this role, again, even Vijay Sethupathi, I think it's so wonderful to see him, and I love the camaraderie that they both have shared in the trailer. What would you say were some of the factors you considered in picking these two in particular?
Well, I think when you watch the film, you will probably realize I needed a sort of a very unique pair, because they're strangers. Like I always give the example of suppose I'm in a train on a long distance journey or a flight, whatever, and the seat next to me is free. So you sort of imagine, oh, was an interesting person and so on, kind of thing. It can be somebody else who's just like, snoring all night or whatever. It can be all kinds of people. So there's that romance of that. I think everyone in their adolescence has, imagined or expected that something beautiful will happen, kind of thing. So this is that kind of a story. It's like, and one of my favorite movies is Before Sunrise and movies like that. So this is like almost it starts like Before Sunrise. It's not on a train, of course, but and then suppose it changes. Suppose both the people have got agendas, both the people have got some kind of a mysterious past, and so on and so on. Then what happens?
Hmm.
You know, Not a love story, but it begins like one of those, who meet cute moments or whatever they are called. So I don't know. I'm just talking to you because I'm slightly, what do you say? I'm just talking to you right now because you're asking not the usual questions.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that, sir. Thank you so much for that. No, but I think it's interesting because I'm glad you mentioned that because that whole sense of adolescence, it kind of reminded me of Woody Allen. Like there was a very Woody Allen feel to it, but imagine if it was literally so dark. It kind of gave that vibe. And again, I spoke to you about the evolvement of your filmmaking that you've had over these 20 years. And if we look at the femme fatale characters that you've had, there's been an exponential growth that you've had there. I mean, if we look at Urmila, I can never forget her scenes in jail and that time when she reunites with Saif Ali Khan. Her eyes, oh my goodness, I could never forget that. Then if we look at Tabu in Andhadhun, oh my goodness, she was Fabulous. Now, I don't know whether there is a femme fatale angle here at all in Merry Christmas, but from the sides of it and from what we know of your filmmaking is that, characters are always not what they seem. There's always a gray shade to them. So, how have you also understood and really brought out that essence of femme fatales? Has there been a particular example that has really stayed in your mind when presenting them as so?
See, I'm a big, I've watched a lot of American noir, French noir, and sometimes nowadays you can actually torrent and get some, Mexican noir, or Italian noir, all the, there are superb gems lying around, kind of a thing. So, yeah, so if you cast, you cast somebody, you have to make sure they do something unique and at least something you've not seen for a recent time, for a long time kind of thing. So when, for example, Tabu, I would say ki when I was working on the script itself, I said, "Oh, she's such a wonderful actor. It will be great." And because I just have to, I sort of with Tabu, what happened is I used to just okay, Tabu, come and do this. Because she's gonna. It's like I'm taking her for granted almost. That's what she probably used to feel. Because I was worried about Ayushman. Okay, he's playing a blind guy. Now this scene is not blind. This scene is blind. So that was my focus there. So I think it's. It's not that I do something which other people don't do. Every filmmaker will try to justify their characters, make them as rich and layered as they can. So that is the attempt.
Right. But then again, is this like I mentioned, the eyes? Is that there's something very innocent about the women that you've casted also. Even if we look at Radhika as well in Andhadhun too. Like, I mean, even Katrina, like there's a sense of innocence that she has in her eyes even now. Tabu को भी आप देख लो तो उनमें उनकी आंखों में एक मासूमियत दिखती है. There's still that sense of innocence. Do you feel like that's something you always go out for? Is almost like an image that perhaps is of that actor, but you want to change it in a certain way. Is that something which you kind of bear in mind too?
Sort of subconsciously, perhaps, yeah, because if somebody has done something often enough and that's why you like them, then I wouldn't like to do the same thing again. So I will try to tweak that persona to whatever extent I can. But not like, we don't do it like, okay, let's take this actor and change their persona. That's not the point. The point is your story first, your character first, and you see who comes to mind, who strikes you, like what I call the dream cast. What is the dream cast? Like, for example, I'm just saying this for fun of it, but if Merry Christmas, I could go back into time machine, I would have cast probably Devan and Nutan for it. So, it's a 50s movie according to me, and in fact, I want to do it in black and white, but
Oh,
I got terrified.
gosh, that is beautiful. That is so. I would love to honestly. I mean, just imagining that would make me cry. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, would have been excellent scene.
I told her, please watch Bandini. And because I just wanted to, Bandini, is it a crime film? Is it a love story? Is it a story of a certain time? It's so many things. These are rich films. I'm not saying I'm there. That's the peak of the mountain. And we are sort of, finding our paths.
Yes, and it's very interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I think nowadays the films that we're seeing, especially when they are about morally and ethically challenged characters, a lot of them are melting pots of kinds. Like, for example, there was a film called Animal which released recently, as you know. And again, if you look at it, it was a complete melting pot of so many different styles. I mean, it was a family drama in essence, it was a thriller, it was an action, it was an absolute gore. I mean, it was gore fest regardless, but there was so many different genres mixed into that. But I think what I have realized is that with your cinema, Sriram, a lot of the conversations about ethically and grey characters really surfaced in the contemporary Hindi space. Like it really gave air to it, especially after Andhadhun released. Obviously now we're seeing this whole sense of moral policing when it comes to ethically challenged characters and gender gendered politics coming into play. How comfortable do you feel as a filmmaker in seeing today's climate and the reactions, whether for or against a certain character in films? How do you feel nervous at all?
I'm not nervous at all, but at the same time, one is aware of the times one is working in, and one is aware of the, those things. So, So whenever, I mean, it's not that I've done something radically challenging the establishment or anything like that, So my stories are actually, see, my thing is not the language, the religion would be cinema actually, That is what I'm really most, faithful to. I want to be faithful to, and in that, like I said, I might suppose. I'll just give an example. It would be like Monster. I don't know if you must have seen Charlie Theron and
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
it's a heartbreaking film in its own way,
Hmm.
So I loved it. So I mean, the thing is, I would not have thought that a story and a subject of that would make it so emotional, and you feel for those people, and of course you're shocked and you're surprised and everything. But I think the art isn't trying to extend this body. So I'm saying since that's why I sort of prefer not to work with big stars simply because with them there is that last movie has made so much, so next movie has to make that plus and all that. It's a pressure which I didn't face too much, but once I faced it in Asian film to some extent, not too much, but a little bit because there the pressure is to deliver and recover the money. Here in my films, I don't want that pressure. I just wanted to be like, okay, if it's you make the film, obviously it should not lose money. But if it does well, great. If it connects with more people, the more people it connects, the better it is. But the film is there to stay and you have a chance to make it. So that's reward by.
और आपकी बात की खूबी यही है, actually, to be honest, because often I speak with directors, especially when they're fresh directors, about how, because they're loved for their independent work, but then when it comes to mainstream, when it comes to them having the backing of big studios, they often have to negotiate and find a sort of a samjhota, per se, a compromise between what the studio wants versus what their voice as filmmakers are. But I think you're one of those filmmakers where I think you've maintained your voice, your style, your forte as a storyteller, but also made it commercially viable. What do you think it is that perhaps gives producers that confidence in you and actually allowing you to actually tell your story your way?
I don't know because it's not that it's hunky dory and easy all the time. And I also feel I've had my arguments with producers and my negotiations with producers and fights with them and all that. And I also feel that it's vital to have that sort of a certain givens and certain pressures, for you to make the film because it's not that it's not that okay, leave me alone and give me. I mean, whatever I want, I'll make because it might risk in me getting a bloated head and making something indulgent. What I don't think it will happen, but I'm saying so. I am not like what I mean. There are as say, with producers. What happens if they have enjoyed your movie, and then they will say, okay, maybe this one will do well. Like my producer said, if you, this one Ramesh Tawani told me after Ek Hasina Thi, he told me, please work with me and see what I would do. I'll market it in such a manner, and I'll do this and I'll do that. I'll make a film a hit. When Johnny Gaddaar released, again he said, so please work with me. It took me many years. I said, okay, I'll work with you, but give me some time and sort of, And then now eventually it happened. So, so, but this is not. I don't know whether you've seen any of Ramesh Sirali's as a producer filmography. I don't think any. In fact, when I first went to his office, I looked at all the posters he's put up. I said, "Sir, I can't make any of these things." So, so you still want me, kind of thing. He said, yeah, okay. So I got the freedom. If there are pressures, it's fine. You negotiate. It's like you get convinced or you convince.
Right. But it's quite interesting that you got tips on board though, because one would actually argue that you have some amazing soundtracks. I mean, Andhadhun, I still bop to the soundtrack. I mean, even Judai from Badlapur, it still hits me here. Like the soundtracks that you've managed to create again, and I know again they're not like typically mainstream commercial masala hits, but still they have a widespread audience that obviously accepts it and loves it as well. So did you find the fact that because obviously Tips was on board for this, you had to really give a slight tawajjuh to the music as well and the soundtrack of this film?
Not really, because I would have thought that is the main sort of trap I would be getting into. But what happened is like when this film was done, every movie I start with, I think there'll be no songs. There'll only be OST. That is what I start with. Of course, by OST I mean nice, rich old songs we take from the trove of Hindi cinema and do it. it's getting more and more expensive to do that because the licensing is so expensive. So you cannot, if I have to, I mean, it'll always be almost cost the quarter of a budget to buy all the songs I want, you know. So, because yeah, it's very expensive nowadays, and I keep telling them there should be some sort of I mean, I keep at least be. I mean, there's only place I haggle. You know, can you reduce it? Like, come on, I want this song, and sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. But what happened here is that when I had this story, coincidentally I met Preetham one day and I said, he said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm doing the story. He said, you want to hear it? Because I like to narrate my stories to people just to get their reactions, you know.
Hmm.
Couple of his associates, and he just loved the story. I said, "You want to do music for this? I don't know where the songs will come." He said, yeah, I will do. And that's how it happened. And he's done some. I mean, they will all come out. Only one song has come out. Two songs have come out now. And but they'll come out when the film comes out. And he's done some very wonderful work for me. And it's very sort of it's his music, but in my kind of movie and so on. So I'm very happy with that choice. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and Preetham, honestly, your collaboration, what in Agent Vinod was honestly, that film was actually really decent. I have no idea why that did not succeed at the box office. I've seen it multiple times. मुझे actually अच्छी लगी थी वो film.
I mean, thank you, Shukriya. मैं क्या बोलूं बोल रहा हूं, because what happens is like a lot of people tell me they like it, but yeah, but at that time the perception was it was not working. Although we didn't lose money, but we didn't it didn't like explode.
Right, absolutely. I think also we were talking about the casting, but I think another thing that really deserves appreciation is a lot of the supporting cast that you have in your films. I think there is a sense of I think it's a sense of joy to see such wonderful. A lot of actors, I think, also have a lot of theater background as well. You know, these are artists that you cast in your movies. I mean, even if we look at from your first documentary that you made, I think called with Raghuveer Yadav you worked with. I think in your initial days, then Pratima Kazmi you worked with, Divadatta in Badlapur, and you know the list goes on and on. I think even in Merry Christmas, you've got Ashwini Kalsekar as well working. So
That was there. Yeah, there are a few so-called regulars, but they are friends of mine, you know. So it's like, it's great to hang out with them. Anyway, what I do is there are a bunch of actors. I mean, they're friends. They happen to be actors, or actors happen to be friends, and I just narrate the story to them just to get a reaction. And if somebody feels, oh, this is such a wonderful, I would love to do this, then I consider that and all that. So it's like I can't think everybody in all the in every movie, but yeah, like there's
mm,
Nakir in every film of mine. And
yes.
in this one also, though he had no role. So I told him, oh, I need to have you. You're like a lucky mascot for me. So he's there in the movie. If you can spot him, then I'll probably give you a masala dosa as a prize.
Definitely. Well, I'm gonna hold you to that for sure. No, definitely we'll do that. But I think Sriram, when you approach Katrina, because I really do want to speak a bit more about her, as I said as well before, because I think it's so important. When you approached her, what was her reaction like for this, and how comfortable was she actually in playing Maria?
What happened actually, initially she approached me to do something. She was just said, "Okay, I like your world, the kind of movies you make. So if there's something for me to keep me in mind." I said, yeah, sure. And we had a cup of coffee and I left, and it was like, okay, there's an actor who said, okay, I want to do something. So someday it's like a rain check. You'll find when you find a script. Then when this came up, then that's when I met her, and I told her the story and she just got into it. She connected with the story, with the character and so on. So after that, it was pretty cool. Now I have to find the counterpart, the male. So it was like she was the first person to be cast in the show before Vijay.
Oh, incredible, incredible. I can't wait to watch like her character. I think as soon as I'm done watching the film, I think Sriram expect like a phone call from me or like a text afterwards to decode everything because I'm sure that's exactly what's gonna happen. No, but I think it's great. And I remember in our last conversation as well, like I think you had just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at that time. And you said about how it's important about filmmakers really reinventing and really doing different types of work and stuff like that. Uh, what would you say is the next milestone for you as a storyteller? Would you feel? And is there anything that's still really ticking inside you that you're desperate to explore?
Finally, for the first time in my sort of not so prolific career. Uh, I've started shooting a film before this film released. I
Oh,
started, this is the same war film which I was supposed to do, which got pushed because of the pandemic. So I began shooting it. I cast a new actor, a young actor. Earlier, Varun Dhawan was supposed to do it. But then we both had a chat, and I said, okay, look, you're in your 30s now, and it's supposed to be, it's called Ekkis. It's about a 21-year-old boy.
hmm.
So I said, look, I mean, he said, yeah, I understand completely, and it will look very fake if we kind of take a star just to because of other box office concerns and recovery and all those things. So I took a new boy who's Agastya Nanda. He's not. I signed him before Archie's. Even went on the floors. And I told him because I knew this is a boy, and it's like he doesn't have to be a fantastic actor. He's like playing an army officer, young army officer who lost his life for doing some really heroic stuff. But the heroic stuff happens in the last 2 hours of his life. Before
Wow.
that, he's and there's a lot more in that story which I can't. I mean, not that I can't reveal, but it's like that I'm not. There's time, but still. So we shot one portion of the film. We've got about 40 minutes we have shot of the film and edited 40 minutes is there. So my next film is like a break from the thriller genre, the typical expectations of a thriller. It's something which is out of that zone. And yeah, let's see. I mean, I'm shooting that right now while this is being marketed and all that. But of course, this 2 months I've taken a break last month.
Wow, that is very exciting. That definitely, I'm looking forward. I thought Augusta was great in Archie's, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Film also has got my favorite actor of those times, Dharmender is there. So he's also got a pivotal part to play and he's done a fab job.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'm so excited. Honestly, this has really got me excited. But on a final note, Sriram, before I let you go, your films have always surprised us, whether it's the story, whether it's the characters, anything of that sort. What would you say, number one, has surprised yourself actually in the process of making Merry Christmas? And what do you think audiences could be surprised by without any giving spoilers? So a bit of a tricky question there, but let's see.
I'll tell you, for me, what happens that like all the other films I've done so far, largely have been plot driven. Yeah, like plot driven. So whatever happens, the plot is like the horse on which you are banking kind of a thing. Yeah, there is a plot, of course. There's a very interesting plot, but it's not plot driven. It's a character driven movie, and I for the first time, like when you write something which is like what do you call maybe a romantic angle. So you always think, okay, is there chemistry? And how do you create chemistry? I mean, while writing a film on my comp, I mean, I can write interesting scenes and all, but chemistry is something interesting coming from the cast. I mean, of course, I'm there, but they have to do the large part of it. And much as we all said, okay, the oddball casting and will it work and all that, I was very confident on the outside, but I was also like, okay, I better get this right, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
It's not that you know the formula or there's any trick to it or anything like that. Somehow while doing it, so when I see the film, I say, yeah, there is something which is special. And I can't think of any other combination except, of course, Devanand and Muthan.
Course. No, absolutely. Well, look, I think it's quite ironic that we're going to be watching Merry Christmas almost a month after Christmas. So I'm looking forward to celebrate having those belated celebrations for this film, though albeit in a very darker sort of shade. But Sriram, it's always so wonderful to have a chat with you, honestly. Thank you so much for taking the time out and congratulations once again.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, pleasure's always mine, sir. Thank you so much. Take care, Sriram. All the best.
Well, thank you.